Hi everyone, this is Arpad from Starbath Academy, and today I will continue with the videos on prepping, especially with the video continuation of Sustenance. So if you have followed my channel before, and when I talked about prepping, I talked about the C4S plan, which is sort of different categories, different ways of looking at things that you should prepare in many other categories, not just one. And the C4S is sort of the basic. There's one C and four S's. The C stands for connection, and then sustenance, shelter, security, and skills, basically. And these are the major categories that you can take a look at, and today we'll be continuing the sustenance part. So there's already sustenance videos out there. I'm gonna put it into a YouTube playlist or something like that on the channel, especially the prepping ones. The way I do prepping videos here, I don't necessarily go in too much detail into many things. There are really nice channels out there, but I try to give you a more unique opinion based on what I know from the past, and especially the Romanian past of hyperinflation and what my family went through the 90s during those times of hyperinflation in Romania, and sort of what got translated into this modern experience that we have here in the United States for prepping. So I usually get nice questions and I try to answer them. I do get into specifics if you guys ask me, but I also tend to just send you on your way to these nice channels that specifically deal with these things, because here we also talk about the economy and other stuff. But I do think that these are important videos and I do enjoy making them. So in our last sustenance video, we talked about sort of our ways back in Romania, how we relied on smoking meat smoking meat, and how we relied on like old-timey, old-fashioned techniques for storing food and such, because one, we didn't have the technology, and two, we couldn't rely on electricity and so on and so forth. So having a root cellar or something like that would be of the most importance for us, right? Here in the United States, it's with the technology and the stuff all you can purchase, it's a bit different. But the way I see it, there are two major ways how you could prep, and from a psychology standpoint, basically. And one is that, so I see both and the mix of both, but one is that there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of fear coming through the news and sort of what's happening in the world, and so on and so forth. And then there's a reactionary prepping for that, which because of fear, there's not too much thought process put into it. So people jump onto a bandwagon and they purchase or spend a lot of money on trying to prep, right? And to be honest, that's better than nothing. It's just you might make bad decisions in the sense that you're not allocating your resources in an optimized way, I should say. And also the fear. So we try to encourage less fear, and we try to encourage hopefulness on this channel, I should say. So there's the other way, from my perspective, how to do prepping is where you make it your own lifestyle, that you pull out of the dependence mode of the 21st century, where we are depending too much on technology, or I should say services as well, given to us by large institutions, right? So in a way, pulling out of that and moving into a more self-reliant way of living, where that becomes your lifestyle, right? And with that comes the practice of prepping, and through that you are still prepared, but you're actually having a more fun, holistic life, right? And I know this takes time, so it's not something that is pushed on a lot of YouTube channels because it doesn't sell that much, but I do believe this is a better way. Now, of course, I do understand if you have fear in your life, you have to handle it, you have to treat it. So let's get into that first, right? Because we'll talk, because my videos tend to be long and kind of a long explanation, and in a soft and gentle way, into introducing you to sort of ideas, right? But if you're scared, that might not be well suited for you. So let me give you a couple of tricks or tips that hopefully will get that fear out of you, and then maybe you can think things through, right? So the very first thing, if you're truly fearful of some major calamity happening tomorrow or very soon, which might totally happen, it might happen anytime, but the first thing you need to do is calm yourself, and the way you calm yourself is actually through having connections. You might think that having like a fully stocked pantry will calm you, but it actually has been proven that yes, it does to a certain degree, and it helps you initially, but what happens is that you're actually looking at that fully stocked pantry full of Campbell's soup, and you're actually even more scared because now you have confirmation that the world is ending, because look at all the pantry that is full with food, because I'm afraid. So that is why that helps you initially, but in a longer period you have to think about connections, you have to think about your own resourcefulness, you have to think about your own skills, basically. And through believing in yourself and believing that you will overcome any situation, you will be much more calm. So with that said, there's still that initial fear that has to be taken care of. So let's deal with that right now. And basically the only way is to at least have a couple of weeks worth of food stored in some way, even if you're living in an apartment or something like that, because that will give you that initial feel of security that, hey, at least I can manage a couple of weeks until I can come up with a plan. So for that, to be honest, the fastest way to get there is to order emergency food supplies, right? And you can these would be something like I believe Patriot Food Supplies or something like that. Yeah, My Patriot Supply or something like that. But these also, it used to be, these are emergency survival kits, survival food kits, but you have to search around because it used to be very cheap to buy these, but now with all the things going on and all of the people being afraid all of the time, the price of these has been going up significantly. So the one I know is My Patriot Supply, but if you know other ones that are, are in good price, then please do comment in the comment section so other people can find it, right? But this is a good point to start, but you don't want to jump in with too much money because you'll need to have more money for actually preparing for the long run. But having a kit like this for maybe a couple of weeks for your family makes total sense. All of these, of course, can be also purchased off of Amazon, but whenever I talk about a product on Amazon and that sort of stuff, I try to put in links in the under the videos, but I also ask you to wait at least 48 hours before you purchase anything. We'll be talking a little bit about books and how to make bread and that sort of stuff, and I'll be making some recommendations that we use and we do. However, these are affiliate links, and you're helping me if you're purchasing something through those, but always think about before you purchase. Never do impulse buying, because you'll just spending money in a non-optimized way. Yes, it might help me with a couple of cents, but you can always help me by the video and sharing the video and commenting under the video. And of course there's the buymeacoffee.com/StartPathAcademy where you can buy me a coffee or something like that. So don't feel that just because I talk about a product and it might be a good product that you need to purchase it immediately. You should always wait before purchasing. So I keep on mentioning that because a lot of impulse buying is happening nowadays, and that's really, I don't subscribe to that. So yes, the first part was these emergency food supply kits that I'll link to, but don't go overboard with that. Just think about a couple of weeks if the price is reasonable, right? And that might help you. The other thing that you should be thinking about doing, and we did this even back in Romania in the 90s, was actually as you're going shopping, you have your shopping list, right? And as you're going to the store, then instead of just buying one bag, you buy 2 or 3 bags, and then that might be stuff that you can actually store for a longer time. And these could be beans, lentils, oats, rolled oats, spaghetti sauce, tomato sauce, coconut oil, and many things that you are using on a weekly basis. But instead of just buying one, that would be until next week, you actually buy 2 or 3. But then you always keep 2 or 3 or 4 in stock in your pantry, and you just keep on rolling it, right? You still go week by week to shop, or every 2 weeks, or how often you go shopping. But what you do is whenever you buy the new bag, you put it in the back of the line, and you just consume the bags of that are in front of the line. So you're always rotating them, basically never leaving them for too long of a time, right? So that I subscribe for that. We are doing that as well. We have been doing that for a long time, and we did that even in Romania, because that way you're actually are having produce, or you're having consumable goods that you are actually using. Because when you buy an emergency pack of some type of food, that's really good to have. However, that is just for there in case there's a big emergency, right? And there's really nothing left, and you have to go into that. However, this way you're actually consuming that you would be regularly consuming. It's just if there's whatever shutdown or whatever craziness that is being pushed upon the regular people, then you have that buffer that you can deal with it for at least a week or 2, or a couple of weeks, or maybe even a month, right? And then we can go in further into prepping more, in the sense that you choose a couple of items that you know how to use, you know how to handle, you know how to make stuff out of it, and it's stored easily, and then you purchase in bulk from those items. And these would be items that, again, you use per week or on a weekly basis. However, this could be something that stores well. It's easy to store for you, and it's something that you can prepare out of it. You can prepare something that maybe you can even share with other members of family or neighbors or so on, right? And one is for us, or and was for us, was bread, right? Because you can store it in the form of flour or even grain, right? And if you have a mill to turn it into flour. So these should be, when you're prepping or storing stuff, there's always at least two ways of thinking again. One is going with nature or going against nature, and it's not always bad or good, but going with nature is thinking about what nature intended that it should be stored, or could be stored, or it has a longer life, right? Shelf life, so to speak. And then the other way would be going with technology, and you can certainly do that as well. So let's take a look at the first side. That would be, right, well, seeds and grains and that sort of stuff, because if you have the ideal condition to store it, then you can store it for a long time. These would be, again, beans or grains, and that sort of stuff, right? But it can be also something like lard, right, or fat. Well, lard, you have to render it, and you have to render it. I mean, you can buy the lard from the store, but that's hydrogenized and whatever. You should be rendering lard if you want to store lard. But these are, again, lard is the fat on the animal. It's actually for storing energy. You're actually going with nature, how nature intended to store energy. Or in the case of seeds, seeds were made to be, they sprout in ideal conditions, but they can last for a long time. So you're, again, going with nature. And these are where you don't need a lot of energy. You just need some knowledge, and you don't need too much investment on it. But you will need some skills to turn this into actual food that you might eat, from seeds into something, or you have to prepare food, right? But it can also be nuts and that sort of stuff, and we'll probably have a list on these somewhere. But for now, just really basic ideas would be beans, rice, flour, corn, lard, as I said, oats, rolled oats, and that sort of stuff. So, and these could be stored in, as long as you have in a cool area usually, or of course individual items, you need to have the knowledge for each of those, but generally speaking, cold, dark areas, or mylar bags and oxygen absorbers and that sort of stuff. It's easy to store without too much technology and without electricity, because you are going with nature. The second part of that is going with technology. I mean, the pinnacle of this right now would be, I say, freeze drying, right? So, if you have the money to buy a freeze dryer, I would like a freeze dryer for us, but we haven't bought one. But if you're thinking about going that way, you're going technology route. You have to have electricity, you have to have money, you have to have equipment, and you can store food that way. And the shelf life of that could be 20 years or something like that. And I'm not saying one is better than the other. You should do both if you can, right? But you should strategize on what to do when and how and for whom, right? Maybe you want to sell freeze-dried stuff in case of the bad times coming or something like that. So yeah, for freeze drying, the one we've been looking at is Harvest Right. That's the one we've been looking at for some time now. We still haven't purchased one. It would be nice to have one. Right, and it's a completely different technology, but again, it comes down to the basics, right? Once the food is freeze dried, then how you have to store it. And to be honest, I'm still learning about this. It would be nice if you guys could comment, maybe, you know, some resources on this, but I'm actively looking into it as well. So these would be two major, of course, freezing, right? Just in the putting food in the freezer. Usually it works with, you know, freezing meat or any other types of food that you can freeze. Of course, you probably know the pros and cons of that. Everybody's doing it. One big con of that is that you need electricity, and as it was in the case in Romania, we could not rely on having electricity. So that's why we tended to do more of canning and smoking and that sort of stuff, and going with nature, and or using older technologies to store food. But I mean, just what has happened with the hurricanes and you know, New Orleans and Louisiana, you probably know, if you have a lot of food in the freezer, the minimum thing you should have is like a generator, right? So you know, look into how you can store how should I say, liquefied or liquid energy in order to run the generator, right? There's ways how you can store gasoline. I'm not a fan of that, of course, but you know, it all depends on you and how prepared you want to be. You know, maybe you're relying on, you know, the gas pump being open, maybe electricity not being on but the gas pump is still open, or something like that. One thing that we did back in Romania is, not my family, but generally the people around us, was actually storing natural gas was much better. If you can run things off of natural gas and you have ways of storing natural gas, it stores much better than any other carbon-based energy, from at least from my knowledge, and something that you can purchase easily, right? Because you can just store it almost indefinitely, I believe, right? And it was easy to come by back in Transylvania in Romania, so because it has that region where we lived in Romania, had a lot of natural gas, and it was very clean and very good and easy to come by. So people even made modifications to their old cars, that it was running on natural gas instead of gasoline. And it was kind of funny. They would turn these old Dacia 1310 models. This was the car of Romania under communism, the car that we were making, and they were turning the Dacia cars into natural gas powered cars, and you can do that, right? And if you can maybe get a lawnmower or something like that that runs on gasoline, on natural gas, then maybe you can use that to run something. I've been looking into that. Of course, you can rely on solar and wind, or hopefully a combination of both, because, you know, Texas. So, and whatever happened there, right? Never just rely on one source of energy. You know, we do like solar, but we don't rely on it too heavily. But if something happens, then we could run some something off of it, right? So it just levels upon levels and it builds upon itself, right? So that's the thing with freezing. Now, as I said, there's a lot of things that you can do, but especially if you're going with this second method of you changing your whole lifestyle into not relying too much on things that break often, especially nowadays, and relying on big institutions or relying networks in place while society runs well, and they are not in place when society doesn't run well. Then what you need to rely on is connections, and one of the S's is skills. So this way, actually, you can turn this whole prepping experience into more of a fun, holistic life experience where you're kind of, I mean, what we're prepping for, or what people are prepping for, it used to be just normal life 100 years ago, right? I mean, so if you take some aspects or some good aspects of that life or family life or that traditional family life and implement it in your own life or in your own family's life, then you're already halfway there. So one thing with that was preparing food, and just not relying on food production of others, right? So having a farm and a homestead and raising animals and growing food. So of course, one thing that was essential for us back home, and we kind of carried that here into the United States, was making bread, because bread doesn't store well, especially if it's not if it's your bread. But if you buy it from the store, who knows what's in that, so it probably stores well. I actually have a funny story with store-bought bread, but I won't waste your time now. In the United States, but it was anyway. So I don't like store-bought bread, and bread again is carbohydrate, so I'm not saying eat bread every day, especially if you can go on a keto diet or do something like that, then go and be healthy. But having the skills and knowing how to prepare and make bread, and knowing the fun parts of it as well, will help you in building a skill that will help you being confident in yourself in these scenarios, right? So we have arrived to my, this is just some of my wife's books on bread making. She bought these from her, this is just from her library that she has on books on bread making. These are the more fun ones anyway. So I'll actually go through some of these, and I did ask her if she wants to present some of these, because she read all of these and more. I just some, and I know kind of what's in what and what she recommends. I asked her if she wants to do a presentation on these. She said she doesn't feel too comfortable making too many videos, but maybe we can ask her to show some hands-on skills when maybe she's folding the bread or something like that in a future video. I'll ask her some more, and maybe if you're liking this video and hitting the thumbs up, then that will surely encourage her. But basically, if you're just getting started with bread and you don't know too much about bread at all, then this is a book that I can recommend to you. I might need to flip the camera source or whatever. So this is A Passion for Bread. It's from Lionel Vatinet. In this, you'll find the recipe for the French country bread, and that is the bread we made first in the United States that we did for a long period of time. We did other breads, of course, from home, and no knead bread or whatever, but this is the bread that you can actually call yourself a bread maker if you're starting with. And all you really need is some good flour, a Dutch oven, and yeah, not really much, but it's a fun book too. So I would definitely recommend this book. It's a fun book. We actually lived in Los Angeles when we bought this book, and he helped started the La Brea bakery. But when we lived there, we were too poor to go there and buy bread from there. But we actually made it from home. So anyway, that's a good book to start with if you're okay with just getting started, and it will probably, like, if you don't want to go too deep into it, you can just stick with that for the rest of your life, and if you're not eating too much bread, it will still serve you. Right, the other one, which is, now we're getting into sourdough, right? So that has, of course, a lot of good recipes, from focaccia to everything, but I'm just saying you can start with the French bread and then have fun from there. But if you want to go into sourdough and making bread with sourdough instead of yeast, then I would, and my wife would recommend this book, which is The Sourdough School from Vanessa Kimball. What I liked about this book was that it actually has almost half of it, or a good third of this book talks about nutrition and the importance of enzymes and how the gut works and how you can treat, from leaky guts to anything other. Like it really does describe the science of your digestive system and what the benefits of eating fermented food and many other things. And this has some really good recipes as well, and gives you it actually gives you almost anything that you want if you want to get started with sourdough and sourdough bread. Now, if it's really good, but I'm more of a visual learner and just have nice images, but I also like watching videos on sourdough, and I will try to find the one that helped us a lot. It was from a German person, where he put like timetables and everything else, what he used it, because the deal with sourdough and the starter is that your starter, when you're starting out, is actually very weak, and the people who have been doing sourdough for a long time, their starter is much more potent, and the times that you have to let it rise and double in size and that sort of stuff will be completely different, right? So you will need to take your time with sourdough. It's not something that you just do a like 4 times and you got it right. But don't give up. It will be totally worth it if you like bread. And then again, especially with sourdough, but all types of bread, what the secret is, or at least half of the secret, is the quality of the flour. So if you want to have success immediately, so you don't get discouraged, start with King Arthur unbleached bread flour, It's not a cheap one, but if you want to have success, then start with that one. It has to, what the trick is that it has to have somewhere between 11 to 12% of gluten forming proteins. And the blue package from King Arthur, that bread flour is really good. So if you start with that, I believe you will have success very fast. And also the other one, the red package, the all-purpose flour will work for you. Yeah. The other one that was good is something called gold medal. I think we had successes with that one as well, especially for the yeast breads and that sort of stuff. Okay, so yeah, we'll talk more tricks. If you guys are really interested in sourdough, there's tons of tricks that will help you along the way. Like, does it float or not, the float test and the doubling test. And let me know if you guys know what I'm talking about. Anyway, so if you want to have more fun basically and a lot of good recipes, and you want to go with restaurant style foods made with bread and other recipes that you start out with bread, but then how you eat it, right? I mean, this book is really good too. And bread recipes and how to fold bread and that sort of stuff. This is a really good book too. I haven't actually read this completely. I just got some tips and my wife's take on these books, but they are called the tartine. I don't know how they pronounce it, but tartine bread. Really good. Even if you think you know a lot about bread and sourdough bread, these books will take you to the next level in the types of stuff that you can make from it, and it will be a fun experience. So this is the again Tartine Classics Revisited. I haven't looked into this. This is Artisan sourdough made simple, but my wife likes it, so there you have. Then again another tartine book, number 3. Very good recipes, but also think about, like, the guy was he went into the restaurant business, and then like how you can like serve that food and bread in a very nice and fancy way. So I know we're talking about prepping and so on, but your life doesn't have to revolve around eating bad stuff. So as you're growing your skills and you're having more fun with it, and if you can afford it, then make it in something enjoyable, right? No matter what you're doing, life was meant to be enjoyed, at least somewhat. So again, another Vanessa Kimball book. I haven't looked into this either. She's reading it. This is the Sourdough School Sweet Baking. So this is for making sweet stuff with sourdough. But again, she really does a good job in explaining a lot of the intricate details of how you do stuff, and you feel that you have learned a lot when you're reading her books. So this should be good as well. I just haven't read this either. So I'll ask my wife, but I think this is the one that she's reading. So that is sort of the philosophical approach when it comes to sustenance, at least for food. That you get the basics done, so you're not afraid. but you'd have to think about making it into a lifestyle. And that's the reason why I was showing you these books, was that like it can be fun, it can be something that you enjoy. It doesn't have to be something that you're scared out of your mind all the time. Once you have the skills, once you have the connection, and you have your prepping at least started or halfway done, then continue it as a lifestyle without being afraid all the time. Because prepping or not, I believe that if you're afraid all the time, it will actually will not help you, because fear is the door to sickness, I would say. So think about, yes, you can prep without fear, right? And focus on that. And hopefully with this channel we can do that, and we can achieve that. Now regarding sustenance, you can always I mean, as you can see, this was at least 2 S's, sustenance, but also skills for making bread and so on. So these things do tie together, right? But think about what are the types of foods that you can store and trade. So one thing that happened during the hyperinflation, or during the economical collapse of Romania, was that things got valued very differently in a sudden manner, right? And things that are essential for life and skills that are essential for life will be valued highly. Because one thing that why we couldn't purchase things other than, you know, just the currency going to crap, was that people were holding on to stuff, afraid of selling it, because things were changing so fast in price relative to each other that you would not want to sell anything. So it would come to this gridlock situation, that if you have a lot of shovels, you might be afraid that if you're selling it today for X amount of Romanian lei, and even immediately you're changing it into something else, you might get a bad deal compared to what you could have sold it for a week from now, right? Because shovels might go up relative to other things fast next week, because things are boiling, you know, the prices are boiling. That's the best way to describe it. And they're boiling at such a high speed that you don't know what's happening. So economic activity stops because people are afraid of doing anything other than the very basic necessities that they want to do. And that is one of the reasons that none of the economists will say, but it's actually why people didn't want to sell anything. As you're going into hyperinflation, first there's usually a stagflationary period that kicks in, then the crack-up boom happens, and then after that then depression and economic activity stops while the prices are hyperinflating. So usually those are the cycles, but these could be short, some could be missing, some could be long, right? Stagflation could be happening for tens of years, at least 10 years or something like that in some developing countries, right? And they don't even know what to call it. And then stagflation is called something totally else nowadays in economic classes. So anyway, so one of the reasons that things stop is that people are afraid of what's happening, and they would rather just have what they have now instead of risking it and then losing out on potential gain, or actually losing out in other stuff as well, or just losing it, losing everything. So with that said, having a skill, you can trade that as you're going, as things progress. You're not losing out on anything. So trading skills and bartering skills, in the sense, I'll do this for you and you do that for me. I'll supply bread for you, right? And you'll come and sharpen my knives for me, or something like that, was much easier to barter with. And you guys, I know you guys ask me about barter a lot, but that's the truth, that skills were bartered much more than actual items. I know a lot of gold and silver people are watching my channels, and I love you guys, and you are truly amazing. The community is amazing. And I know we talked about in previous, and I'll be talking more about my opinions on that. One thing you have to know about gold or in silver is that these things will be appreciating a lot as the faith in government and the faith in institution is collapsing. Not necessarily because of inflation, but because of inflation, faith is collapsing, and because of faith is collapsing towards the end of this cycle, it will be, in my opinion, it will be rising in price. However, you don't necessarily want to trade, and people will not necessarily want to trade their whatever is actually rising in price to something that is sort of stagnating at that period, because in my opinions, precious metals is, I talked about, if you don't know, then go watch my video on gold during inflation, and I'll link it into the description. But it has its cycle, and a cycle is totally different because it's a more monetary asset other than a commodity, especially in these scenarios. But other than that, is also think about how few people know about the value of silver, right, or the value of gold. And it's fine to assume that in these scenarios they will know the price, but to be honest, more likely will be the case that you will be actually trading these things with someone who already knows the value of it, instead of that relying on people that they will learn in this process, and then you will profit from these people a lot. What will most likely happen, and in this case, in our case, what would happen, especially during the initial period, was that actually they would barter in everything else than what would be probably even the best tool for barter, because they didn't know that. It's hard to educate people, and if they know, even during the hyperinflation of Romania, people still traded in cash, because some people had many. The vast majority had a hard time grasping of what's happening, right? And they would still deal in cash. People will lose faith in cash very slow. Eventually they will lose it. By that time, the whole hyperinflation is over. They would rather than during the period turn into a different form of cash. It could be other currencies, or in this case could be cryptocurrencies or something like that was pumped into their heads even prior by major institutions. Hey, this is something that you can use. That doesn't mean that currency will be actually going up. It might be, definitely it could be, but I'm saying it's not a guarantee, because people, as they were trading Romanian lei, it was still falling, and they were trading German marks, and eventually that was falling relative to goods and services provided in Romania, because more and more German marks were flowing in. So compared to the first year the German mark, where it was very rare in Romania. It was, as more and more was flowing in, it was actually even losing value, you know. So I'm just saying that in a case where this happens, you can do what you want, but I would not just rely on this one silver bullet. I should say that will fix all of your problems. You know, have skills, but think about, a lot of people will trade shotgun shells way before something that you might think they will trade, because they know the value of that right now already. You know, I bet with enough, you could trade enough shotgun shells and hire someone to paint your room or something like that. I'm not saying you should do that. That it might be even illegal. Check with your lawyers, but maybe you should sell or whatever, or have a FFL license or to do something like that. I'm just saying that people will, what they know already, they don't need convincing, right? Now there will be a time where people will know that, hey, this would have been a good investment, and at that point it will be much easier to trade. But that's one of the reasons why I don't think it's a good idea to have precious metals where you're actually living, is because for me at least, it's more of a wealth preservation tool for across generations, a multi-generational tool that may be something you could store in somewhere else where you don't even live, miles, or even in different jurisdiction. And if you have multiple citizenships, then you can probably come up with some good ideas. Alright, so that was Sustenance with bread and some other interesting stuff mixed into it. We will continue with the other S's as well. I think security will be coming up next, and we will continue with Sustenance. I think security will probably just be on buymeacoffee.com or patreon.com. Or maybe parts on YouTube. We'll see how we can structure that. So thank you very much for watching. Please remember to subscribe to the channel, like the videos, and comment. It helps me out a lot. Thank you very much.